Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Weekly Wrangle. This week, I'm going to tell you why you should never call yourself a junior. This is a hot take. It's definitely going to be controversial for some of you, but hear me out. There's good reasoning behind why you should never do that. Allow me to explain why I believe this is the case. Here's my number one reason. Number one reason is because this is what the demand looks like for work in VFX. On the left here, we have 0 years of experience. On the right, we have 20 plus years of experience. Now, don't take this verbatim. This is just my opinion on what the demand looks like for VFX work out there. But typically speaking, once you get past 10 years of experience, that's when your opportunities begin to skyrocket, especially if those 10 years have a lot of strong production experience. And that's usually when people hit their peak demand in studio work. And by demand, what I mean is how much do people want to hire you, generally speaking. So a high demand means that people want to hire you and they also want to pay you a lot of money for that work. Now, let's take a look at what the demand looks like for other industries. You'll notice that in other industries, we start here at 0 and there's still not a lot of demand for people with 0 years of experience, but then there's a more linear increase as we approach 10 years of experience. There's more of a gradual increase of jobs, of people that want to hire you. And even though the demand is still highest for people with 10 plus years of experience, it's much easier to get started in other industries because this demand is more linear from 0 to 10. Now, you'll notice that this also drops off here once we reach 20 plus years. And the reason why it drops off is because most companies are looking for people that aren't too young and people that aren't too old. Being young and being old has its own sets of pros and cons. So a lot of businesses, a lot of companies, they try to find people that aren't old and stubborn and also aren't stupid and young, to put it bluntly. So that's why this tapers off. And typically in VFX, it actually tapers off, I think, a bit more aggressively once you start reaching 20 plus years, because it's very rare for someone to be 20 plus years into the game, not burnt out, and also still caught up with the techniques, with modern techniques, and not just doing things the old school way. And so, again, for other industries, it usually looks something like this, but for VFX, you have something like that. I know some of you might be saying right now, okay, Tyler, but here's the deal. There's laws against people discriminating against age, or there's laws against people discriminating against race, or these other things. And idealistically, I agree with you. There should not be discrimination for those reasons. Unfortunately, in the real world, that's not how it works. The very existence of race quotas and gender quotas within HR means that people are discriminating based on race and gender and, yes, even age. Again, I don't agree with that. That's a topic for another controversial video in the future, but it is what it is, and that is going to be factored into how people look at you in your resume. And as I was saying, the reason why you shouldn't call yourself a junior is because you are announcing to the world that you are right here on this graph. And because of that fact, your work will often not even be considered for a second if someone perceives that you are a junior. Most of the job opportunities out there are looking for people who are at least mid-level or higher. And even if they advertise 5 years of experience, they really want someone up here most of the time. So calling yourself a junior doesn't do you any favors. Oftentimes, even if your work is amazing and just as good as someone up here, you may not even be considered because of the title you have assigned yourself. Now, I also want to say that I have less of an issue of calling yourself a junior if you are in an industry that looks like this. Calling yourself a junior could place you anywhere along this side of the graph. And there frankly are a lot more opportunities for juniors in, let's say, engineering or let's say software development as an example. But because VFX has such this steep demand curve, again, you're actually going to be hurting yourself by labeling your work and who you are as a junior. So that begs the question, if you don't call yourself a junior VFX artist, then what should you call yourself instead? Well, you want to go from this, that is a baby with a binky, by the way, for the junior VFX artist, to a VFX artist. Notice the difference? One has a mustache, the other does not. One of these looks like they're going to be cool with, I don't know, $30,000 a year in a roommate situation. The other one looks like you might actually have to pay him a livable wage. And here's the thing. If you call yourself a VFX artist, are you lying? Absolutely not. You're telling the truth, right? You're just telling the truth in the most generous way possible. And by the way, if you don't think that recruiters are going to pay you less money or try to get you for less, they absolutely will if they see junior in your title. And for that matter, I would even go so far as to hide any university experience if you graduated recently for that exact reason. That is also one of my radical opinions that I'm sure many of you disagree with. But the thing is that a recruiter, if they get a whiff of you being a junior VFX artist, they are going to try to pay you less for the same work as someone who is a VFX artist. And why is that? Well, because many recruiters get their bonuses based on how much money they save the studio for getting talent through the door to fill the seats. Not all studios are like that, but many are. So the recruiter's job is often to find ways, excuses to get you down on the number as much as possible. So again, when we're looking at the situation, the takeaway is that you want to be honest and you also want to be generous when it comes to identifying yourself on LinkedIn, when you apply to anywhere, and more importantly, you want it to be about your work, not your title. In my opinion, I think the more important thing than titles is the actual contribution that you bring to the team. And I don't believe that having more years of experience necessarily makes you a better artist than someone with less years of experience either. The more emphasis you can place on your work, the better. Unfortunately, titles and years of experience, that all gets in the way sometimes of people actually seeing your work and valuing your work in a way that I think it should be valued. At the end of the day, we're trying to make CGI and we're trying to make it in the best way possible. If someone has 10 years of experience, it doesn't necessarily mean that their work is going to be better than someone with 5 years of experience. And beyond the work, it doesn't mean that they're going to be a better team player either. I can easily say that as a VFX artist myself, and having worked at a few studios before, just because someone has a big title or resume doesn't mean that they're the best team player or doesn't mean that they make the best work. But from the perspective of someone who's not a VFX artist, who's in HR, they're often going to go by these superficial metrics, and they're not going to see the same nuance that a VFX artist or a 3D professional has. They're going to see someone call themselves a junior, they're out. And unfortunately, it's leaving a lot of talented people left in the dust for reasons that aren't really that great. I'll put it that way. If I could just magically change the industry, I think VFX artists should be treated much more like athletes rather than people that just fill seats and fill a traditional title, like, a taxi driver or someone that is doing work that can be easily measured in years and associated with quality as they work more in a particular field. And by athletes, what I mean is it's a lot more based on their performance. There's a lot more consideration taken to the individual as opposed to whatever shows up as stats on a resume. Yeah, it does help to have a resume that features a nice school or a resume that has this or that. But at the end of the day, they're going to be looking at who knows how to run a football or who knows how to score the most touchdowns or something like that. There's much more attention paid to the details of an individual when you're trying to, let's say, recruit a team than there is currently with VFX artists. Here's the other unfortunate reality. As a junior right now, you are competing against a lot of seniors and a lot of people that are in between that 10 to 20 years of experience. So you don't want to give yourself a demerit for any reason whatsoever. You want to make sure that you're always honestly showing yourself in the best light possible because the competition is hot right now. Unfortunately, the other reality is that there's lots of people that lie on their resumes as well. And for those people that do lie on their resume, because some HR recruiters are lazy, they actually do get special treatment and they actually do get their real seen because they are lying. So if you're someone who's honest, you have to compete against people that are lying. And again, I firmly am against lying on your resume. Don't do that. Even for the people who are lying, they're going to find out that that's going to bite them in the butt real hard down the road. But for someone who's honest, unfortunately, you also have to compete with those people as well. And again, it's all the more reason why you need to paint yourself in the best light possible. So there you have it. That's my opinion on it. You'll find people with the exact opposite opinion as me. But more importantly, what do you think? Let me know in the comments. Did I get this one right? Did I get it wrong? Let me know. Until next time, thanks for watching, and I hope you have a great day.